So welcome everybody. Introductory EFT workshop. It's something I really enjoy doing. I do it 4 or 5 times a year in Dutch. This is the first one in English. And here's my goal. I want to use the first hour to explain what stress is and why it is interesting and beneficial to really identify what your stress patterns are, what are triggers for you. Then the second hour, I want to practice both basic protocols. And then in the third hour, we'll do questions and whatever else you want to look at. And I always start my workshops and presentations and trainings with a little landing meditation. So that's what we're going to do right now too. So when you're ready, please close your eyes. Or look with a soft gaze down to the floor or whatever you see there, but not at the screen. Just go inside. And then take a nice relaxing breath. And bring your attention to your feet. And simply become aware of the fact that your feet are touching the floor or some other surface. And then shift your attention to the rest of your body, where you are supported by whatever you are sitting on. And you may feel that on the back side of your legs, your buttocks, parts of your back, and sometimes also your arms or hands. And while you keep awareness on your feet and on your body, now shift your attention to your breathing. And without changing anything in your breathing, simply become aware how it feels when you breathe in and breathe out in your own tempo. And then when you're ready, shift your attention to your thoughts. All kinds of thoughts will come up. That's normal. But for now, my suggestion is that you pretend all these upcoming thoughts are just little white clouds in a blue sky. You simply let them float by. Don't engage. Just let them go. And then finally, become aware of the sounds you hear. You'll hear my voice and probably also sounds from your own surroundings. And simply use any sound you hear right now to help you relax here, now, in this moment. And then consciously take a breath in through your nose. And on the out breath through your mouth, just blow away, let go of anything you don't need in the 3 hours that are coming. Let's do that again. So breathe in through your nose. And now on the out breath, let's go of any stress you can still feel in your body. Just let it leave your body. And while you're sitting here with a head that is as empty as we can get it, and a body that is as relaxed as you can get it right now, realize that your subconscious already knows exactly why you are in this workshop and what you want to take from this workshop. So relax, let your subconscious do the work, and give yourself permission to be here now and focused on this webinar, this workshop, by opening your eyes, looking at the screen, and realizing you are here now in this workshop. So a very warm welcome again. Let's dive in. So I want to start my story with explaining what stress is. So what is stress? Stress simply means that your stress reaction has been turned on in your body. There's 2 systems. You have your sympathetic stress reaction, you have your parasympathetic relaxation response. Those are counterparts. You have both, and both are always more or less activated. During the day, you are more in sympathetic mode. During the night, you're more in parasympathetic mode. That is normal. And so my first good news of the day is that your stress reaction in and of itself is normal and healthy, and there's nothing wrong with that. You need the stress reaction. It's called the stress reaction, but it's also the reaction that your body uses for any activity. So getting up, walking around, thinking, reacting to stuff. If the stress reaction is turned on a little more, we call it the fight-flight response. That's still a normal reaction that we use to have more energy, and basically you're stronger and you're faster than you normally are in your normal daily state, so to speak, simply to be able to either fight or flight, which means that reaction is turned on the moment you feel in danger, the moment you feel threatened. And so feeling, threatened is not just physical threat in the sense, there's something, there's a lion running towards you. That's a physical threat, and your sympathetic stress reaction will turn on. We humans also turn on this same stress reaction when we're in a conversation and somebody says something that feels threatening to you. So nobody's punching you, there's no knife, nobody goes, but even in a normal conversation, in social situations, you use the same stress reaction to fight and flight. But fight would mean, you say something, you become angry, you start shouting, whatever you do, or maybe even do something physical, that might be the case. Or you flight, which means you shut up, you go away, you get out of the room, or whatever you do. But it's the same reaction. So in and of itself, it's a healthy reaction. But if the stress reaction is turned on, the volume is turned up too high, much more than you need in the circumstances, that's unhealthy. If it's turned on without even needing anything of an extra stress response, that's unhealthy. And chronic stress is also unhealthy, because chronic stress and also the situations where your stress reaction really is activated while you're just in a social situation and you do not need to have this extra energy to fight off an attacker, and you don't have to run away. That's excess stress that you really don't need, and that's unhealthy. And especially chronic stress, which means either the stress reaction is never regulated down enough so that you're in your normal, in the normal range, or when it's easily activated to a high level. The good news is that EFT is absolutely brilliant to work on your stress reactions, your stress patterns. And if you really, sort of unpack it, you use EFT to resolve the unnecessary stresses that you have. And we'll look at those, because you have many unnecessary stresses, lots of time in the day. So that's where EFT comes in. Now, EFT has been around for a while, but in this workshop, you will learn official EFT, and I will teach you both protocols. So both gold standard EFT or tapping, as well as the optimal EFT protocol. I have two protocols which are available on my website as free downloads. I will put the link in the chat at the end of this workshop and in the show notes. But the link will bring you to my two free basic protocols. So that's for later. You can download them and use them as you wish. I also want to point out, this is official EFT, which means it's the EFT that Gary Craig developed and is still working on, especially optimal EFT. And I find that, I want to make a distinction because there's lots of EFT workshops and trainings and what have you else. But I really want to point out that we're going to look at the official way of doing EFT. So my goal of this workshop is that at the end of this workshop, you really understand what these basic protocols are about, and you also understand how to use it. What are the necessary steps to really successfully use them? You can choose. I mean, you can, if in general, if you're more agitated and there's a lot of stress or anger or fear, it is easier to tap first and then switch to optimal EFT. If things are slightly calmer, you can easily start directly with optimal EFT and just play around with it, whatever one you like best, or you can alternate. That's fine too. So far I've said the stress reaction is a normal reaction, but you don't want excess stress, and you need to, be able to regulate it down so that you're not in stress mode all the time. So the counterpart of the stress reaction is the parasympathetic relaxation response. As soon as you go through a lot of stress, you need to go through an extra deep state of parasympathetic relaxation to recover from the stress that you just went through. Now, this is also a very normal cycle. So during the day, you're more in sympathetic stress. During the night, your parasympathetic relaxation response takes over. And during the night, if all goes well, you recover from the stresses you had during the day. If everything is in balance, that's the cycle. A little more stress during the day, more parasympathetic relaxation during the night. And this is how you meander through life, if all goes well. But not if you have excess stress. So the stress reaction is turned on because something triggers you. And this is very important to understand. These triggers are very personal. You have triggers in your life that turn on your stress reaction. Obviously, there are triggers that everybody reacts in a similar way, and with fear or anger or whatever else. But it's very important to understand that your stress and your stress patterns are your individual program. So stress is a learned behavior. What do I mean by that? Every situation that you experience where your stress reaction has been turned on more than normal, so to speak, so it really fight-flight mode, all those situations, every detail of that situation will be stored in your long-term memory for later use. So, during our life, we just build this big database with things that are triggers for us, so that when we're in a situation and one of these triggers is playing out, the stress reaction is immediately activated. And that response is an automated response. In other words, there's no time to think, well, let's not do that. Let's just say, stay calm. It's an unconscious, regulated, automated response. It takes about, so your subconscious processes about 11.2 million bits per second, I should say. Second is Dutch. Let's not do that. Very, goes really fast. You're conscious, thinking, oh, let's not, him again. Let's not get irritated. That only, your conscious only processes about 60 bits per second. In other words, you cannot catch up with your subconscious in that respect. And if you realize that every stress pattern has been automated in your subconscious, that is the reason why talking about whatever gives you stress, your problems, analyzing it, thinking about it, cannot resolve the stress? Because there is a link between the triggers, your personal triggers, and your stress response. That link needs to be severed in order for the link not to work. Because quite often, usual I would say, the triggers are still there. You know, your family members are still there. All these situations will happen. So what we do with EFT is make sure that you first identify what gives you stress, what situations, including people. And then if you use EFT properly, you sever the link between whatever it is that triggers you and the stress, your stress response. And this is an important thing to grasp for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you want to use EFT successfully, you have to, walk back and see, so how did I learn to react like this? Where did this start? Usually in early childhood. There's also all kinds of stress patterns that arise later on in your life, but the most important ones start in early childhood. You need to identify, how did I learn? In what specific moments did I learn to react the way I do? How did I learn to turn on my stress response? And that is what we will be discussing a bit more in the second hour of this workshop, because that's the trick. That needs to happen. You need to realize that thinking about stuff is not going to resolve, or sever this link between trigger and stress response. So what is EFT? Strictly speaking, EFT means that you activate the stress response, and by either tapping or doing the spiritual method with meditation, you bring peace to the system, which means your sympathetic stress reaction is regulated down and your parasympathetic relaxation response is regulated up. The relaxation response switches off, kills the stress reaction. The balance changes. Which means that if you want to do this successfully, you have to identify first, what is, in what situations do I have a link between triggers and stress response? You have to relive these moments in order to really activate the stress response. And then by applying EFT properly, the link is severed. I keep saying this, you will hear me say this many more times. EFT is about severing the link between triggers and stress response, so that the link doesn't work anymore. It's done, it's over. So the trigger may still be there, but you're not triggered into turning up the stress response, like really into fight flight, because that simply isn't happening anymore. The reason why you can't decide to not be addicted is for the same reason. Behind the scenes, in your unconscious, subconscious, there is an automated response between triggers and stress response. So yes, you can force yourself with a lot of willpower to stop smoking or whatever else. But it's more, it's easier and more successful, and the results are more lasting if you do it with EFT. If you work on whatever triggers you, that made you, find a cigarette or whatever the addiction is. You could almost say that your negative responses in situations is also a certain type of addiction, habit, at least a habit. Let's not call it an addiction, but it is a habit. I am pretty sure that many of you will in certain situations, will go like, oh, here we go again. Or you've reacted with stress, and then afterwards you think, why? I know this guy or this woman. Why am I triggered all the time? You are, because it's an automated response. So before you can stop yourself, the stress reaction has already been activated. So I think this is a good moment to see whether you have any questions so far. Is this clear? Are we good on this? Yeah? Excellent. Then I will continue. All right. What else? You need to understand that anything can be a trigger. Anything, because every situation in which your stress reaction has been turned on to fight flight, the details, the aspects, the details of that situations are stored in your long-term memory. So I'm talking about everything you saw, everything you heard, smelled, tasted, and touched, or were touched about, touch at least. So the senses, all information of your senses are amongst the details that are stored. Also your thoughts, the important thoughts, especially the negative ones. Also the way you hold your body and the position of your head, but basically every detail is stored in your long-term memory. So anything can be a trigger. It could be, a certain look of somebody. It can be a color. It can be a person. It can be words. Anything. Any detail in a situation can become a trigger. So now quite often I'm asked, yeah, but this was a long time ago and, I don't think about it anymore. So why bother? Well, because if you are in a situation now and something triggers you, your system automatically looks at whatever, is similar to what you're going through right now. And so there is a buildup of stress, and there's more of a stress reaction than is necessary in this situation, because all the prior experiences, all the stuff from your past, plays a role in how you react now. So we score between 0 and 10. Yes, 0 is you don't feel anything, there's no emotional reaction. 10 is maximum. If your reaction is more than a 5, almost always, and I would go as far as to say at least in 95% of the cases, your reaction has got only a little bit to do with what is happening right now. The rest of your reactions, stems from the past, originates from earlier experiences. So if you go through your day and you are triggered into something, you really have it, and with triggered we mean negative emotions. Yes, because we're talking about the stress reaction, so we're talking about negative emotions. And in my world, I have 3 groups. I divide it in 3 groups: anger, sadness, or fear. There's many more. There's 27 human emotions. And some research has shown that. However, the big umbrella would be anger for certain selection of emotions. The other big umbrella is sadness, and we have one for fear. If you really boil it down to where things come from, both sadness and anger quite often are, beneath that you will find fear. Fear is it's either fear or you're in love and peace and there's nothing wrong. So if we keep it super simple, you could work only on whatever gives you fear, but we usually don't recognize that we're fearful when we're really angry or really sad. So those are the 3 main groups. And I encourage you that if we start practicing the second hour, to really keep feeling whatever the reaction is until you have identified, but this reaction belongs to the fear group, or this belongs to the anger group, or the sadness group. Could also be a combination. You do not have more than 3 emotional responses in one peak, in one moment. We'll look at that in the second hour. But back to stress and why I think it's important to identify what stresses you out. In any situation where your score is above 5, be assured that your past plays a role in your reaction now. Obviously, as I was just saying, there could be situations where your stress reaction is completely adequate, completely, in sync with whatever is happening, but usually not. Usually, most of your reaction is more from past experiences, the result from past experiences, and only 10-20% belongs to this situation. It's at least in every single situation where you in hindsight think, I could have been a little calmer, or I could have been a little nicer, or I was too angry or too irritated. Those situations for sure you need to identify, because in those situations the stress pattern really activates the stress response to a higher degree than is necessary. So, how do you recognize that you have stress? The stress reaction in your body enables your body to fight or flight, which means your blood distribution changes, dry mouth, dry eyes, your whole digestive tract goes to the back burner. The blood goes to the big muscles. So you usually have cold hands and feet because those are very small muscles, and you usually don't have to do very precise needle work when you're running away. You're in full fight or flight. Your whole body is made ready to fight or flight. So these changes you can feel in your body. Your heart rate elevates, breathing is high and quick, fast, dry eyes, dry mouth, stuff like that. Those are the physical symptoms. And then there's emotional feelings, because when the stress reaction is fully activated, you quite often have an emotional reaction too, which is fear, sadness, anger, or any variation that belongs to these three groups. So, when do you have stress? When all this is going on in your body and you can feel bodily symptoms and or emotions. Now, sometimes you only feel the emotions, sometimes you only feel the bodily symptoms, but it's all the same. It's not the same, but it points to the same. It points to the fact that your stress reaction has been activated for fight and flight. Which means that all in all, if you pay attention, then that means that any situation where your fight-flight reaction is activated and you're not running to catch a bus, and you're not on the top of a stairs and you stumble and you need to grab the railing in order not to fall, if all that is not happening and you're not jumping, but you're just, in a normal situation and the fight-flight is on, that's where you need to do EFT. Usually afterwards. Very difficult to do EFT, running, Although, why not? You're in a fight, your stress reaction is on, and why not just tap or meditate? Well, usually we don't do that. But the good news is, and that's a very important characteristic, the sympathetic stress reaction is turned on in the moment you need it, but you can also very easily turn it on if you relive the situation as if it's happening right now. And that's the reason why EFT always needs to start with reliving whatever it is that you want to work on. Now, the fact that all this information is stored in your long-term memory, and the fact that we are quite visual. So when you start talking about things and while you're listening to me, you probably also make, not, complete drawings of everything, but pictures do pop up with your right brain. We make pictures and images. And so when you're talking about something, if something happened and you tell the story to somebody else, to yourself or somebody else, you're making pictures, images of what happened. You might not even be aware of them, but they do happen. And that means that you activate the stress reaction again. You will notice this because if something happens, for example, something has happened at work, you come home, you want to tell your partner, oh, this and that, and then, you will notice that you have emotions, stress, you're angry, you're irritated, or whatever it is that, was going on in the situation, while simply telling what was happening. So now I just want you to realize that this sympathetic stress reaction is for fight, flight, and you can only use it in the moment that you really need the fight, flight reaction. So I hope that we all agree that if something happened 6 hours ago and you're telling it now to your partner, you don't really need the fight, flight. Because it happened 6 hours ago. And on top of that, you probably weren't in danger, so you didn't need the fight flight to begin with. But that's what we do. If it's, under 5, if it's just a small emotional reaction, all our emotions are part of our human intelligence. So we use emotions to show us, to tell us, what is this situation and how do I need to deal with this? So a little emotion is not a bad thing, but use it in the moment when whatever is happening, not afterwards. Don't hold on to it. So research has shown that an emotion only lasts for a few seconds. After that, there's a story, a narrative starts, a story starts. So we keep the emotion going and we make it worse because we're starting to tell ourselves a story, consciously or subconsciously. This and that, and why me, and this all, and it's hopeless, and all those, the self-talk that we do prolongs the emotion, and that's not necessary if you realize that emotions are only to establish, is this good for me? Which are the nice emotions: joy, laughter, relaxation, peace, whatever, the nice things, parasympathetic. Organize more of that. But if it's a negative, stressful reaction with anger, fear, or sadness, or stress in your body, you only need it for as long as you need to do something to protect yourself, to ward off any attack or whatever is happening in the moment. So if you don't agree or don't understand this part, then I think, again, this is a good moment to look at the chat and see whether we're all good. Are we all still on the same page? As far as yeah? All right. I don't see anything pop up, so that's good. So here we go. Now we've established that your stress reaction in and of itself is normal, but it shouldn't be, you shouldn't be turning it on to a degree of fight and flight if you're not in a situation where you have to fight or flight. That we have established. Any situation where you react with more emotions, more stress than is needed to be adequate in that moment is a moment that you can work on with EFT. Anything can be a trigger. Even, expressions, facial expressions, certain look in the eyes. Why is that a trigger? Because in your history, somebody was involved in a situation where your stress reaction was activated to fight and flight. And that detail was programmed in. Interestingly enough, that also applies to foodstuffs. So allergies, if you really look at allergies, they don't exist. What do I mean by that? It's not your body that is overreacting to whatever foodstuff or whatever, pollen or whatever it is that you're allergic to. But the foodstuff or the pollen or whatever it is that gives you an allergic reaction has become a trigger, was programmed in. Now, many people have experienced a lot of stress while eating. Just look back at your childhood and how were your dinners? The dinners that you were eating at the dinner table, and was it nice and peaceful, happy talks, or was it stressful? Was there tension? A lot of people eat while they're very upset. Very unwise thing to do. Do not put anything in your mouth when you are upset. So I hope that from now on, after this workshop, you will do EFT first and then go full throttle on the box of chocolate. I don't mind. Just do it. Do it. But do EFT first. So don't be angry, sad, upset, irritated, fearful, and then stuff your face, because you risk the fact that it might get programmed in. Not always, but you can't tell what will be programmed in and what not. But all details in a situation where your stress reaction has been turned on to fight, flight, can be programmed in, can become a trigger, is in your database. You can only turn this off, change this, if you work very specifically on the link of your triggers and your stress response in that type of situation. This is the reason why tapping scripts don't work. Those are, generally formulated problem areas with generally formulated reactions and emotions and thoughts and whatever else. It's too much. It might, if you do the tapping script, you might think a bit about whatever happened in your case, but usually it's too broad, too general. Now, the fact that you're either tapping or meditating, I don't think there's only tapping scripts, so I haven't seen it for optimal EFT, but for these tapping scripts, while tapping, you are activating the relaxation, activating the parasympathetic relaxation response. So you will feel better while tapping, but it's a temporary effect. Research has shown that stimulating these acupuncture points on the body activates the parasympathetic relaxation response. So tapping, there's nothing wrong with tapping, but it's just a waste of your time to do it in a general way. So that's what I would like to say about tapping scripts. And the other thing is, what was it? I lost my train of thought. There was something else that I wanted to add to this one. So tapping scripts. Oh, yes, I remember. Tapping on working, you can also meditate, working on symptoms directly is fine. If you're lucky, you will be, because you're activating the parasympathetic relaxation, the symptom might become less or even go away, but you will not be able to resolve your problem with tapping on symptoms. So symptom-focused EFT is fine if you're really upset and you want to bring yourself, in a calmer state. It's perfect. Do it. But don't leave it at that. And also don't wait until you're like completely upset and then either tap or meditate and hope that things will resolve. They will not. They can only you can only resolve your stress patterns if you work specifically. So next time you're upset, bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. When you're calm enough, it doesn't have to be a 0, but if you're calm enough, then identify what triggered me and work on that. Step into the moment, relive the moment, activate the stress reaction again. So you need to, whatever was upsetting you, you need to turn it on again, and then use EFT to very specifically sever the link between trigger and stress response. So I come across a lot of people that basically only do symptomatic, symptom-focused EFT. It's a bloody waste of your time. Not really, of course, because it calms you down, but it's not going to help you resolve your stress patterns. So what is a stress pattern? The stress pattern is any automated link between sets of triggers and your stress response. Those are called stress patterns. We have many, many, many stress patterns. And you need a good way to identify, so which ones do I need to work on? And I have found in my experience that working on daily triggers, identifying what are daily triggers for me, what are situations that my stress reaction is really turned on, is really, turned up to fight-flight level. If you start with daily triggers, that's the best way to take inventory, to get an overview of what are my most important stress patterns. Because the way we're sitting here now, you're the sum total, I am the sum total, everybody is the sum total of whatever we experienced in our past, all the way up to this moment. So during the day, you react to your situations the way you have learned to react to these situations and the triggers based on your past. So beginning with identifying what gives you stress during a normal day is a very good starting point. And actually that would be my suggestion at the end of this workshop, that you try EFT specifically on working on what we call the worst moment of my day, which basically simply means that either during the day, if you have time to immediately work, or at the end of the day, if things go on and you can't do EFT, you wait until you have time to do it. You identify 1 or maybe 2 or 3 worst moments of the day and apply EFT until they are absolutely 0. So, long story, let me see if there's any questions. I have a question. Is it more useful to activate the stress response by entering into a stressful situation and work in this moment? Or go on a balcony to trigger my fear? Yes, very good question. You need to do both. But here's the thing. So the question is, if I have a fear of heights, can I just go up, on a balcony, a high balcony, and just activate it like that? Or do I have to work on the situations that happened in my past? The situations in your past need to be addressed because those are now unconscious triggers, part of the stress pattern. So you need to identify, how did I learn to be scared? So in what situations was I really scared of heights? Going onto the balcony is actually a very good test to see how you're doing. So I would, stay indoors, work on past situations. And then when you have done between 5 and 10 specific situations, then I would go to the balcony and see how much progress did I make, because it's a really good test. So current here and now things are good tests. And you will, if you have to be on a high balcony and experience the fear of heights again, then it has become your worst moment of the day. But I would use circumstances that would trigger you into the response that you want to work on as test moments. Same goes for elevators. If you're really uncomfortable in an elevator, I wouldn't get into the elevator to get it started, because you need to identify what earlier moments did happen where I feel like that. If you can't access that, then it's a good idea to just, enter an elevator or pretend you're entering an elevator, to start there. And in the second hour, we will discuss a few technical details on how to precisely do that. Let me look at another question. So the three primary emotions, there's three groups: fear, everything that belongs to fear, and sadness, grief, sadness, and anger, irritation, anger, etc. The reason why we do this is because quite often you think you name a emotional reaction, but it's more of a conclusion, like I feel lonely or I feel abandoned. It's a good thing to realize that you feel abandoned, but what is the emotional reaction? Are you angry? Are you sad? Or are you scared in this moment where you feel abandoned? Or I feel misunderstood. So sometimes you'll be angry, other times you might be sad, or the other. In other words, quite a few descriptions of reactions are more conclusions. And then it pays to dig a little deeper until you realize, I feel really, really abandoned and alone in this situation, and there's fear. Some of these emotions, like frustration, it sounds almost like an emotion, but sometimes you'll be really angry while frustrated. You could also be really sad, or in fact really scared, fearful while frustrated. So it pays to dig a little deeper, because it makes it a little more specific. I presume tapping on symptoms, for example, pain, when you have just scalded yourself or whatever, does work. Yes, I mean, if you have just injured yourself and there's pain, it's okay to tap on the pain. I would definitely also tap on the fright, your fright reaction, the stress reaction, and only if you afterwards, if the pain has subsided and you then realize you're really angry at yourself because you were clumsy or whatever else, then I would relive the moment again and work on the anger towards yourself. It's just a simple example. So you can sort of unpack a moment. If there's an immediate reaction because there's pain, it's okay to tap on the pain or work with the unseen therapist. But afterwards, just check. Was it just pain, or am I frustrated or angry, or is there anything else in this little moment that needs attention? If one has a very strong allergy reaction because of long ongoing stress and illness, can we do EFT just on the most major and memorable stress moments and continue from there? Well, yes, but I mean, if you have an allergy reaction, I would obviously, if you already have identified like really clear big events that happened where you're allergic, you can do them. But for instance, start with the last time you had the allergic reaction. In what type of situation was this? Could be food related, could be, activity related, pollen, whatever it is that you are allergic to. Creams, I don't know, sunshine, doesn't matter. It's not your body that has decided to go, berserk on your skin because the sunshine on your skin. No, there are emotional triggers which are somehow related in being outdoors and feeling the sun on yourself. So if you really carefully start to look for, well, what is this? Why? What happened? What were stressful situations when sunshine on my skin was also part of the deal? Then you will start to recognize that there's stress And those situations you need to work on. All right. Something else. I was thinking of something else. I forget. While I was answering your questions. Yes. Being specific means that you identify the moment, not the times. Every time somebody says something to me that feels like criticism, I have this and that. That's a very general description of a problem area. If you want to work on feeling very vulnerable if somebody criticizes you and you go, I'm not good enough, whatever else, then you need to identify at what precise moment in time does it happen. What was the last time that I felt, unsure or angry or sad or whatever it was because somebody was criticizing me? Now, this example pertains to the negative core belief. We have many stress patterns. One of the most important stress patterns that has been, programmed in and has become an automated stress response is your negative core belief. Now, your negative core belief means that you personally come to the conclusion, subconsciously, sometimes consciously, I'm not good enough. There's a few variations. I'm bad, I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, I'm not worth it. The sentence always starts with I am, and then follows a negative description that means not good enough, that you are not good the way you are. But there's sometimes, slight variations. It's not about the others, it's about yourself, how you feel. And it's what we call, you identify yourself with it. So the sentence starts with I am. Now you have many stress patterns. So there's many reasons why you would come to the conclusion, I keep thinking that. Like I can't succeed, or I have a problem with finding the right partner, or whatever these conclusions are. Those are also stress patterns, if there's stress involved. But the negative core belief is your most important stress pattern. And I guarantee you, if you were to do, and I hope you do, after this workshop, daily work on your worst moments of the day, 1, 2, maybe 3, if you have time, you will recognize that most situations involve your negative core belief. Those are the most stressful situations because we're social animals. So our social interactions are very important. And so many situations involve your negative core belief. So negative core belief is a very important stress pattern. Again, a pattern simply means there's an automated, regulated program between triggers and stress response. Could be anything. All right, let's have a look. Is there anything, because I want to do a few more questions and then we'll do a short break and use the second hour to discuss the basic protocols and practice them. I don't see any questions. Do we have any more questions? You. All good? All right. So in summary, in this first hour, we looked at the stress reaction. The counterpart is our relaxation response. Both are healthy states to be in. Usually there's a balance. During the day, a little more sympathetic stress. During the night, more parasympathetic relaxation. What we need to work on are those situations where your stress reaction is dialed up to fight or flight while you don't need that. It's too much. That means we all have already identified the specific situation where this happens. You might want to start with, oh, I'm always so insecure when I have to do this or that or the other thing. That also is the result of stress patterns. So you need to identify what are the precise, exact, specific moments where I feel like this. So if you come to the conclusion you have a certain problem, the question you need to ask yourself is, what is the best example of one specific moment where exactly this is happening, where I feel the way I don't want to feel, or I react the way I don't want to react? Then you are allowing yourself to start working very specifically. All right. Then we'll take a short break. So in this second hour, I want to practice both basic protocols. And here's the thing, I want to practice on very small issues, not because EFT doesn't work on big stuff, because I do use it for PTSD and highly traumatic stuff and everything. But I want to practice the technique. So we're not here, resolving big trauma. So I want you to select one small situation so that we can, work on it. And I have, I use the various rounds. We will start with gold standard EFT tapping. I use the various rounds to explain a bit more on why we're doing what we're doing, and I'll check if there's any questions. Here's the thing. If you want to successfully use EFT, you first have to identify a specific moment where whatever happens, where whatever, behavior or whatever emotional reaction that you want to work on is happening. If you want to sever the link between trigger and stress response, you have to work until a tested zero. I repeat, you have to keep going until all reactions, both emotional as well as physical, are zero. And with zero, we mean that there's no reaction in your body. In other words, the stress reaction is shut down, is off, is not on. And the only way to, first of all, establish exactly what you are feeling and helping yourself to turn on the stress reaction as much as possible related to this moment is by stepping into the moment and reliving the moment as if it is happening right now. So you need to look through your own eyes. You're in the moment. And if somebody, in this moment, if somebody is behind you, you have to realize you're here, you're looking this way, and behind you, somebody says something. So you hear it from behind, in other words. If somebody's standing right here and shouting at you in your face, that other person is here, so you can see him right there. In other words, you have to relive the moment as if it's happening right now. This is also the reason why with highly traumatic experiences, you don't do that. You need your dissociation techniques to safely go through that. So we don't do that. We're not going into anything traumatic. There's tons of things to do with our normal daily stresses, triggers, irritations, frustrations, and what have you. You can do tons of works. So leave the big stuff for later. Start with this. So again, you need to identify one moment, and in that one moment, only one, what we call crescendo, happens. One trigger at a time. So if you want to work on a fight that took 2 hours, there's probably, several triggers, but you have to pick one. So, and we're not doing big fights now. We're going to do an easier situation. I want you to pick a situation where somebody else tells you something. You see somebody, you're both in the same space. Somebody says something to you that you do not like. If you do not find a situation like that, you are also allowed to use something with a text message, one text message, not a whole series, one text message. All right. And so basically you need to identify what are the exact words that I don't like. What is, what is the real trigger here? somebody looks at you and say, I hate you. Or somebody looks at you and say, oh, you did that wrong. And you don't, you always, whatever. I don't mind what it is, but pick only one. And I want you to stick with this one moment. Because I want to practice that we work it to a 0. Now, not everybody might end with a 0, and then it has become a homework assignment. If in this, practice round, you can't get to 0, because some just simply take a little longer than others. So we'll see how far we get. You have to do it afterwards after this. Well, have to do it. I can't tell you what to do, but I strongly advise you guys to finish it, because here's the trick. It is much better to do just one thing really thoroughly than tap or meditate on 10 things and stop halfway through. 0 means the sympathetic stress reaction cannot be activated anymore. So you neither have emotions nor physical feelings. Make sure that you check everything. All right? It might be a combination. So you need to check everything. There need to be peace in the system. So the trigger is still here, and you test, and no, I'm, peace, nothing happens. And only then we call it a tested 0. One of the frequently made mistakes in EFT land is that people just, stop halfway through. I want to say step, it's not even Dutch, it's not even English. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, but so don't just, if you're upset at a 9, and you work, you bring it down to a 3 and think, oh, fine, I'm okay again. No, keep going. You really need to work until it's tested 0. So, there might be situations where you just tap it down or meditate it down and then continue with whatever you're doing, but make a note to self, and do it, later on the day and finish it. Again, I want to emphasize, you have more success, there's more effect of doing one specific moment completely and thoroughly than 10 halfway. 10, just tap or meditate a bit and don't do everything. The reason being that what we test with EFT, when you've done the work, and then now you need to test one more time to see whether this link is inactive, whether there's no link between the trigger and the stress response. Yeah? All right. So what we do is, first of all, we need a specific moment. We need to relive the moment, and you can just tap with me if you want. We'll say a setup phrase while tapping on the side of the hand. You can tap with 4 fingers like this or like this. Either hand, doesn't matter. And here we say the setup phrase. We'll do that as soon as we start working. And so now I'll just go through the points. The first point is on the top of the head with a flat hand. This is not EFT. This is also not EFT, because you're literally missing the point, because it's Bagway. It's this point right there. So if you tap either with, if you know where it is, or with a flat hand, you're good to go. This is the first point, and you repeat whatever word summarizes best how you feel. Beginning of eyebrow. I always do one finger, because I've noticed that my clients better understand where the point is if I tap with one finger on the beginning of the eyebrow. Yeah, one is higher than the other. I don't know, something wrong with my eyebrows. Side of eye, and just right on the rim of the eye socket. So not here, all right? It's right there. Under eye, under the iris, straight under, on the rim of the eye socket again. Then we continue with one hand under the nose. This is the chin point. So it's not on the tip of it's not the Kirk Douglas little thingy there. It's right there. And then collarbone here in the middle, just one fist, but just feel, you need to touch both beginnings of your collarbones, all right? Last point is with the flat hand under your arm, right? Flat hand, right? So those are the points. We'll do a couple of rounds, see how it goes. What else do we need to know? I guess not. So here's the thing. I'll help you associate First, pick a moment where somebody says something to you, a sentence, a word, something short that you really don't like. And go ahead, close your eyes and bring your head a bit down with your chin a bit towards your chest because you can feel better that way. Close your eyes and step in this moment. With that, I mean, realize, where am I now? In what room, in what space, outside, where am I now? Who else is here? And feel for me. Am I sitting, standing, walking? What am I doing? Are there other people? What are the colors, the sounds? Just be in this moment. And now let that other person say whatever they say. And feel for me. What is your emotional reaction? Are you angry? Are you sad? Or fearful? And score this. 0 is nothing, 10 is max. And keep feeling this emotional reaction. Where in your body can you feel it? If you can feel it in your body, where is it? Stay in this moment. So let this person say it again, because I took some time to explain this. So hear the words again. Become aware of your reaction. And let's tap. You can keep your eyes closed if you know where to tap, and otherwise you look at the screen. So tap with me and say out loud, or out loud in your head, even though I feel this emotion, I choose to accept myself. Top of head, my emotional reaction. Beginning of eyebrows, my reaction. Side of eye, my reaction. Under eye, my reaction. Under nose, my reaction. Chin, my reaction. Collarbone, my reaction. And underarm, my reaction. So open your eyes for a moment. I always ask my clients to open their eyes because then we can, it's clear that I want to talk a bit further. What we did now is you picked one moment, you stepped into the moment, which is called an association. Setup phrase, 1 round of tapping. The reason we say you repeat word while tapping is because you need to try to stay in the moment or be focused on whatever you're feeling as best as you can. Not everybody can do it, but that's fine, because normally we go on by reliving the moment again. Setup phrase, round of tapping. Here's the trick. The association and the round of tapping needs to be as close together as possible. So you relive the moment, setup phrase, 1 round of tapping. Only 1 round, because you want to tap while the stress reaction is activated. With most smaller situations, by the time you're halfway through your tapping sequence, the reaction is a bit, has petered out a bit. You need to activate it again. Because only if the stress reaction is activated, the tapping will work. So tapping more than 1 round is useless unless your reaction is 10 or higher and you're really upset and you really need to bring yourself down. You want to tap more rounds. That's fine. That's the exception. But for all the normal stuff, the daily stuff, association, setup phrase, 1 round. Association, setup phrase, 1 round. It's a circular process, right? Or whatever you want to call it. So, I say my reaction, this emotion, whatever, but if you tap on your own, you use the word whatever. So when you're angry, you say anger. If you're sad, you say sadness. And if you're fearful, you say this fear. But for now, because we're working all together and I don't know what your reaction is and where you feel it, I just use this reaction. So again, normally you fill in the word that best describes your emotional reaction. That's it. No more words. Nothing fancy. Nothing. Basic protocol. So close your eyes, please. Step very precisely in this moment. If you're sitting, feel that you're sitting. If you're walking, feel that you're walking. If you're lying down, feel that you're walking, if lying down, etc. Where's the other? Become aware of your surroundings. Maybe you can feel the temperature and how it smells. Or maybe not. That's fine. Let this person say what they say. Feel your reaction. What is the emotion? What is the physical response? What is the score? Keep feeling it and start tapping with me. So side of hand, even though I have this reaction, I choose to accept myself. Top of head, my reaction. Beginning of eyebrow, my reaction. Side of eye, my reaction. Under eye, my reaction. Now we continue with one hand. Under nose, my reaction. Chin, my reaction. Collarbone, my reaction. And underarm, my reaction. Keep your eyes closed or close them again. Step into this moment. Really be in this moment. It's happening right now. Feel where you are. Let this person say what they say. And assess for me, what is your reaction now? What's the emotion? Is there physical feeling? And what is the score? Keep feeling it. And let's tap. So tap on the side of your hand. Even though I have this reaction, I choose to accept myself completely. Top of head, my reaction. Eyebrows, my reaction. Side of eye, my reaction. Under eye, my reaction. Under nose, my reaction. Chin, my reaction. Collarbone, my reaction. And underarm, my reaction. Keep your eyes closed or close them again. Step very precisely in the exact same moment. Be here. It's happening right now. Listen, see the other person. What is your reaction? What is the score? And then, if you know, I would very much appreciate it if you would be so kind as to put your starting score and this last score in the chat so that we can see whether you went from an 8 to a 3 or from a 7 to a 2 or from a 5 to a 0. So 2 numbers, please. So have a look at the numbers that are appearing. So 7, 1, 5 to 0, 8 to 3, 8 to 3, 7 to 4, 8, 4, 7, 3, 6 to 2. So there's various numbers, various reactions. A couple of you guys are down to a 0, 7 to 0, 5 to 0. So just, if anybody else wants to share, here's the thing. The ones that have a 0, once you are a 0, I want you to do one more thing. That's final testing. See if it's a test 0. So for those of you who have just reported a 0, I want you to close your eyes and again step into this moment and really do your stinking best, as we say in Dutch, to get any stress reaction activated. In this moment only this little piece, this remark or whatever the words are, nothing else, don't think. And if it's still a 0, can you please just put still 0 in the chat? And if it is if you still feel a reaction, just give me a number. So for those, if you do it now, then we know that it's you, the guys that tested their zeros. Nina has a 1, yep, still 0. Who else? So this is very important. As you can see, some of you are, remain at a 0, which is fine. That means you're done for this little piece. If you go, if it goes up a bit, or you still find even a half or a 1, you have more to do. All right. So what did we do? We selected one moment. You relived the moment, associating fully in the moment. Why do you need to do that? Because otherwise, your stress reaction in this particular situation isn't fully activated. So thinking about it, talking about it, may activate it to some degree, but not fully. And that's what you need if you want to be successful with EFT. So you always need to step into the moment, relive the moment as if it is happening right now, in present tense. Not talking about it in past tense, but in present tense. You identify emotion, physical feelings, symptoms, and location and the score. Do a round immediately. Again, activate the stress reaction. Set up phrase, 1 round. If it's 0, you have to do it 1 more time to really try to get anything activated in this tiny little moment. So don't go, don't wander off from this moment and think of other moments. No, you have to do this one. If this is finished, then you pick another one. Yeah. If you're not at a 0, my suggestion is, that is a little homework assignment. Please finish this one, because I want to start with a fresh one for the optimal EFT, just to get this, go from this the same starting point, so to speak. So if it's not 0, I really would urge you to finish it after the workshop. Just finish it. So make a note if you need to, because if it's not 0, you are not done. Okay, so now I would like to switch to optimal EFT, and if you really want to know what optimal EFT about, you should at least read the Gary's ebook on the unseen therapist, because in this approach, a more spiritual approach, we make use of a meditation, and we make contact with what Gary has called the unseen therapist. He has given her a female gender, but the unseen therapist can be anything you want. However, in this meditation, because it's a bit of a guided meditation, when I do it like this, I use the unseen therapist and her and she, whatever. But do customize, because if the unseen therapist is not female and something else, that's fine too. They don't mind whatever we call them. Whatever the source is, whatever you consider to be the forming principle, the binding principle, the source, whatever it is, it's fine. It's fine. Interestingly enough, I do optimal EFT with people that are absolutely not spiritual and also not religious, and really think that the moment you die, the light just goes out and poof, that was it. Optimal EFT still works. You can also, say unseen therapist is your higher self or your intuition. It's all fine. It's all fine. So I'm not doing it, it's not the whole story about optimal EFT. There's a lot to say about EFT. I just want to practice the basic protocol. And if you feel this is a way you like to work, then I would encourage you to read Gary's ebook, which can be downloaded from his website for free, and dive in and familiarize yourself with the breadth and depth of what optimal EFT is about. But sometimes I don't have time to explain, and I work with somebody, and it also works. So let's do this, if that's okay with you guys. So again, I want you to pick one situation where somebody says something to you that you have an emotional reaction to, a negative emotional reaction to. And it's a guided meditation, and just follow along. So close your eyes, please. Bring your head a bit down and step into a new moment. Again, a small moment, but a new moment. And just take a moment to realize, where am I now? Are there other people? What are you doing? Are you sitting, standing? What is around you? And again, let the other person say what they say. And assess for me. What is your emotional reaction? Anger, fear, or sadness? Is there a physical response? Can you locate it in your body? And what is the score? 0 is nothing, 10 is maximum. And let's assume that you know what the reaction is. You have assessed the reaction. So keeping your eyes closed, become very still and very quiet. And bring yourself in a loving state by connecting with something loving. A loving moment, a loving memory, something uncomplicated, but joyful. Something that might even bring a smile to your face. And while you're in that state, ask what we call the unseen therapist to completely resolve this emotional reaction in this moment. Just focus on the moment very shortly. This is what you want resolved. And go back to your loving feeling. And we'll meditate for about a minute. And then gently round off the meditation. And open your eyes for a moment. And then when you're ready, close your eyes again and step into this moment and test for me if you relive this moment associatedly. So step into this moment, look through your own eyes, pretend it's happening right now. What is the score now? And then just, if you know, if you've assessed it, please give this, so this is only one round, but please, if you want, share this in the chat. From what intensity to what intensity did you go in one round? And while you're putting it in the chat, I want to point out a few things. the idea is that whatever happens in the meditation is quite involuntary. So don't start to change things or actively, feel that you need to be, happy and whatever else, or change what happens or how you feel or what else. And also do not test during the meditation. Just, surrender to the meditation. Trust that the unseen therapist knows what is needed here, and leave it up to the unseen therapist. So quite a few people are most comfortable with just staying in the loving moment. If it helps, it's okay to see a metaphor, to use a metaphor. So you could use a metaphor for how you feel, and you can use a metaphor of beautiful light or loving feeling or whatever else. If that helps you to keep yourself in the moment, it's fine. But I would like to advise you to not actively, start to change things during the meditation, or thinking, or analyzing, or comparing with anything else. Sometimes images do appear. Sometimes you hear something. Sometimes there's insights. But those are quite, what is the right word here? They just happen. So if you just sit back and relax and just let the process take its course, that's the most, I would say, beneficial way to do the meditation. And if you look at the numbers, what I always notice, because I do these workshops often, that the intensity tends to go down a little quicker than with tapping. Both are fine, both have merits, and I'm particularly happy with optimal EFT. We're going to do another round, but sometimes things go really quick, because even in this one round, at least one of you went from a 5 to a 0. So that's quite interesting, because we only did one round of meditating. Before we do another round, I just want to give you time to ask questions, if you have so far, about what we've done. If not, we'll just do another round. No questions? Excellent. So let's do this again. I do have a question. Let's look at this one. Do people often have a mixture of emotions, such as anger and fear? Well, often, I don't know whether it's often, but it could be. As I just said, in one moment, you can have a max of 3 emotions from the fear group, the anger group, or the sad group. If you have more than 3, then you are shifting. You are not focusing on one situation only, and not only the one situation, one crescendo, one peak. Because if you're working on a fight and somebody, bangs open a door, that could be one trigger. Then you see an angry face, that could be another trigger. And then somebody shouts something. Then I have already 3 different little scenes to work on. If it's really close together, you can do it in one. But if after this, somebody grabs something and throws it through the room, that would definitely be another, little scene in this drama. So if you have more than one emotion in one peak, you are not focusing enough on one peak only. You are either thinking, analyzing, comparing it, thinking about other stuff. So you need to say to yourself, only this little piece of it, just the little piece. And when that's done, you do the next piece. That's how you do it. So let's do another round. So we're using the same specific moment. So please close your eyes. Just look down a bit, because that makes it easier to feel. And step into this moment. Look through your own eyes. It is happening right now. First, become aware of where you are. How it feels. Who is here except you? And now let the other person say whatever they say. Only this little piece. And assess for me, what is your emotional reaction? Do you have a physical reaction? Where in your body? What is the score? And then keeping your eyes closed, become very still and very quiet. And bring yourself in a loving state by connecting with a loving feeling, a loving moment, a loving memory. And then ask unseen therapist to resolve this situation, your emotional reaction in this moment. If you want, you can focus on it very shortly. Go back to your loving moment. And trust that the unseen therapist knows what needs to be done here. So just let it happen. Let's do that for another 60 seconds. So round off the meditation now. And then again, test the situation. So step into this moment very precisely. Where are you? What do you feel? If somebody says this, the person says this to you, go ahead. And just assume that you know enough what your reaction still is and become very still and very quiet. Let the focus go and bring yourself back in a loving state by connecting with something loving, a memory, image. And from that state, connect with the unseen therapist and ask her to completely resolve the situation so that you are at peace. No stress reaction needed. You're completely at peace. Leave it up to her. Let's meditate for another minute. And then gently round off the meditation. Open your eyes for a moment, which is called break state. That's just to mark the difference between the meditation and the testing. Because now when you're ready, I'm going to ask you close your eyes, please, and step into this moment. Really relive this moment. Pretend it's happening right now. Look through your own eyes. Hear what they say. And assess your reaction. And then again, when you have established this, please, if you want, share it with us in the chat so that we can have a look. So do the starting intensity, number, score, and the last one, this one that you just assessed, so that we can see from where you started to the result. Yep, 8, 1, 8, 7, 1, yep, 0, 10 to 8, I think, 7 to 2. I'm just reading some of the numbers. 6 to 1, 6 to 0, 8 to 0. Very nice. 4 to 0. So already, group, you can see that more people reach 0. The ones that have assessed that they are at a 0, please check whether you did the final test. So one more time, just really, do your best. Can I still get anything activated in this little piece? If not, you're at a true 0. So I always lose count, but I think we did 3 rounds, 2 or 3 rounds, and quite a few people reached 0, which is wonderful. Again, if it's not 0, please, you have another little homework assignment thingy for after the workshop. So let's have a look. Any questions so far? Anything about what we did so far? So in the next hour, we'll look at all your questions, or whatever you want to ask me. But let's just check. So we practiced, and I want to keep it really basic. So this is the basic protocol. All right. Any questions about either the gold standard protocol or the optimal protocol? Can I speak a little about anxiety? I felt anxiety in sadness and anxiety in fear. I'm not entirely sure what you mean. So here's the thing. The emotion happens in the moment itself. Could be fear, it could be anger, it could be sadness. Anxiety is more of a process, a worry about future problems. So I would need a little more information to help you better with that question. Maybe we can look at it at the end, see if I can give you a little more on that. But anxiety is not, is a thought process, and is basically sort of disconnected from what is happening in the here now, because in the here now you feel an emotion, fear, anger, sadness. And so anxiety pertains more to your thoughts, your expectations, etc., about future things, future happenings. Another question? I have a little trouble envisioning the safe place. Can I look at nature or a photo? Absolutely. It was a little better when I looked at a tree outside the window, which is a safe place. Yes, so we're not, a safe place is a nice description. What we're looking for is not specifically a safe place, although that works too. Gary usually says, bring yourself in a loving state. But if a loving state is not feasible at the moment, feeling as calm as possible or in a safe space is wonderful. You can do anything for that. And indeed, you can look at a tree outside, you can look at a picture, you can, imagine yourself floating on a little airbed on the ocean if you like that, or on a nice lake, or outside in the sun, or in a meadow. Anything goes. You don't have to use a memory, and it can be any image. If you like a forest, be in a forest. If you like the beach, be on a beach. Whatever gives you this nice, calm, peaceful feeling is enough. If feeling, completely immersed in love or in a loving state is not yet feasible again, just go for that. That's wonderful. If there's no more questions let's take another break. And after the break, we'll look at any questions you may have. So see you, and I want to take a break of 10 minutes. So see you in 10 minutes. So let's look at a few of the questions about optimal EFT and how you do it. So here's the thing: if you're working on one specific situation and you step into the moment to test the moment, and you become, for example, very angry at yourself, then you have a new thing to work on. Do a few rounds with optimal EFT on the anger until it's low enough to test the situation, see whether the situation as such is finished. If anger is part of the deal, it's just another aspect, another detail, and you need to keep going, with these meditations until all the details, all the triggers, the aspects of this moment that you selected, all are zero, which means you just continue until you test every trigger in the little piece that you selected, and everything should be zero. So that's one thing. The other question was, somebody said, I'm not used to stepping into the situation, associating, reliving it completely, and then start the meditation process. Focusing on the moment is not enough. You need to activate the stress reaction. So it may take a little practice to do that, because you first need to activate the stress reaction, fully activate it, in order for the whole personal peace procedure, because that's what it's called, the meditation, to take full effect on the whole situation. Sometimes people skip the step of focusing on the problematic situation, the issue, during the meditation. So there's many variations. We wrote a book, Gary and I, and in the book there's at least 6 variations of doing the personal peace procedure. So have a look at that to see whether you want to change things. But I do want to emphasize, you need to activate your stress reaction first. Otherwise, it's always wonderful to do the meditations, or the tapping for that matter. So that's not the problem. The problem is that you need to sever the link between triggers and stress response in this particular moment. So I don't mind if you start with a meditation, but then, one way or the other, you need to step into the moment and relive the moment as if it's happening right now. That's your final test also. So practice with it, because you need to activate the stress reaction before the EFT can be very effective. And so we don't talk about safe place in this type of meditation, but we talk about the loving, you bringing yourself in a loving state. If you have an issue with the person that you use to bring yourself in a loving state, and that conflicts, you simply can't do that. You have to choose something else to bring yourself in a loving state. And again, if a loving state isn't possible, try something peaceful. Something calm is fine too. But you need to and you can also switch between several things that make you feel calm and at peace, or loving, or whatever else. It's just to bring yourself in this state, because communication with the unseen therapist is a little easier when you do that. So I'm advising you to practice it, so that you can actually make use of the fact that you first activate the stress response. Otherwise, you can't sever the link again. This little repetition here. Another important question: if someone is feeling, let's say, guilt, do you treat the guilt, or dig down to see which emotion underlies it? Is it possible that if you treat the guilt first, then the sadness, anger, or whatever will naturally disappear? I think it should be. So my advice is, keep digging until you understand this is anger, sadness, or fear, or a combination, as I said before. If you really feel guilty, it's a good idea to keep feeling the guilt and assess, am I angry, am I sad, or am I fearful while feeling this guilt, because there's many forms of guilt. So it makes it just a little more specific. And it's in my experience that if you unpack guilt and really feel what the underlying emotion is, it's easier to resolve. Same goes for shame. Shame is also more of a conclusion, because sometimes you're really angry or really sad. You could also be very fearful. In other words, shame and guilt, both types of conclusions, emotions, states, whatever you want to call it, it's very helpful to simply feel what is this. If you can't decide, don't fuss, don't think about it too long. Just do one round and see whether you can do it in the next association. Just relax, feel the guilt, feel the shame, feel the whatever conclusion, and then just feel whether you are able to identify what the emotional response underneath is. Let me see. What is the name of the book you wrote? It's called Official EFT from A to Z. You can't read the title, but it's right behind me. Françoise, thank you. Yes. So if you look for EFT from A to Z, you will also find it. But the official title is Official EFT from A to Z. So the book explains both protocols in great detail, as well as background, and we have 2 chapters on explaining what stress reactions are, what problems are, and also how to work on them, and how to work on physical problems. And then the second part of the book gives you all, per letter of the alphabet, I discuss another topic and explain exactly how you can address this with EFT. So I'm happy with the book. You understand that. So I can't, I'm I'm plugging my own book. So let's not do that. So there's 3 more things I definitely want to discuss before we end this session. First of all, the worst moment of my day. That's just a simple little title to help you identify a stressful moment in your day. If you do it on a daily basis, as we discussed before, it will show you what your most important stress patterns are. And here's one more step that you could do. What we just practiced is you step into the moment, you pretend it's right now, happening right now, you look through your own eyes, you relive the moment. So one more step that you can incorporate when you are working on the worst moment of the day, because that's a trigger in a current situation, which is a recent one, as soon as all the intensity of all the emotions and physical reactions are halfway, at 50%. So if you start at 100%, if they're around 50%, around 5, during this association, being in this moment, you can ask yourself, when did I feel like this before in my life? Quite often, one particular moment will pop up. And it is very interesting to then switch to that earlier moment, completely resolve that one until it's a tested 0, and then return to the one that you started with and finish that one too. Why is that an interesting approach? Because, as I said, we are the sum total. Each of us is the sum total of everything we experienced. And so all our stress patterns have been programmed in, and now you're here in this day. And if you identify what is particularly stressful for you today, you start at how this stress pattern shows itself to you today, which is interesting because you can only live in the now today. So if you take the current moment as a starting point, and then when the intensity is halfway down, instead of either tapping or or doing the personal peace procedure, the meditation, ask yourself, when did I feel like this before? Your subconscious will help you pick out something relevant from your past that is absolutely relevant for this stress pattern. In this way, if you do it like this, you will see that you come up with things you haven't thought of for a long time. Because you're reliving the moment, you're in a sort of trance, which makes you more accessible to, to pull up something that is really relevant, instead of using your mind to think what else needs to be done from my past. That's fine, but this is better. So try it. Try it like this. So that means that the worst moment of the day you can do in 2 steps. You start with the current one. You switch to whatever you find when you ask halfway through. What does this feeling remind me of? This emotion? When did I feel like this before? You do that one, an earlier one, and then you switch back to this current one. If you do this 2-step, you will notice results very, relatively quickly, because it's a very effective way to work. Because whatever you find is relevant for the stress pattern that you're working on. So that's the one thing that I wanted to mention. The other one is that sometimes, you run out of time. You need to do other stuff, and you're not finished. So it's not a tested zero yet. Then you need to safely park the issue. If you're still agitated about it, you need to safely park it. So just visualize a container and either tap a few rounds and tell yourself it's in this container and it stays there until I work on it again. Or you can do a meditation and ask the unseen therapist to put it in a container for you and keep it for you until you can work on it again. You don't have to do this with small stuff. So if you start with the smaller bits and pieces, daily stuff, you don't have to use safely parking a lot. But if you are a little agitated and you run out of time and it's not a zero yet, which means you're still a little agitated, then safely park it until you can work on it, either on your own, or if it's more comfortable to work with somebody else, do that. I mean, you might have triggered something that is a little bigger. And that's the third thing I want to explain, which is called taking yourself out of the association. So association is important, and you can do this on all the smaller issues, smaller situations, it's fine. But if you accidentally remember a very big issue, which is, too big to handle now or on your own or whatever else, open your eyes, get yourself out of it, tap a few rounds, ask unseen therapist, keeping your eyes open, and say, I'm parking this in the black box to work on it at a later stage, or to find somebody to help me with this. If you visualize it goes in this container that is closed off and you don't have to work on it anymore, that really works. I always use the black box technique. It's an old technique that Gary used to have on his website, but I use it very often. So I want you to practice that if it's a big thing you want to visualize, you put it in a sturdy container and put it away, put it in a place where you don't have to look at it, literally look at it in your visualization. So that's the 3 things that I wanted to make sure that we covered in this workshop. And let me look at the questions. So treating guilt, you don't have to treat guilt in the sense that, so guilt is an emotion or a conclusion, and it might be sort of a nice summary of a stress pattern that you have. But working on specific moments where you really feel your guilt is much more effective than working on the guilt. Again, if you don't know whether there's anger, sadness, or fear, lurking under the guilt, start with guilt. It's fine. As long as you do it specifically in a specific moment, then you're fine. And it will show up or not. And then in the next specific moment, in another one, it might become clear that there's, fear or anger or sadness underneath. Optimal EFT has been around since 2014. So indeed, Françoise has answered the question. Quite a long time. So the gold standard tapping since mid 90s and optimal EFT since 2014. So what else? This is a good time to ask any questions. So let me summarize. We discussed the stress reaction, the relaxation response, and that you need to use EFT to work on all excess reactions. Why? Because chronic stress makes you ill. And you don't need it. Let's agree that whatever happened and whatever the situation was in which you needed your stress reaction to go to fight flight, that moment isn't happening right now. So you do not need that stress reaction anymore. It's in the past. It's gone. It's done. Only by working specifically on these situations, bit by bit, can you sever the link between whatever the triggers are and your stress response. And that's the only way to successfully resolve your issue. Why? Because working, with symptom-focused EFT, be that tapping or working with the unseen therapist, you are aiming at the symptom, literally. But the symptom is the effect. The cause are specific moments in which this stress reaction was activated. The reason you have this symptom now is because those experiences in your past are in your database and have become an unconscious automated stress response. So, and I'm, my background is medicine, medical doctor. I don't like treating the symptoms as a doctor. That's useless. I want to work on the cause, and so do you. Because if you work on the cause, the symptom goes away. You can temporarily work on the symptom with EFT, and it might go away, but you have not resolved the whole stress pattern. You have only resolved the symptom. And that's why working on specific situations is very important. What else can we do? Any more questions? Are we done? So yes, let me do it again. I was trying to summarize. So we looked at stress, and then so in the second part, we practice both basic protocols, and I will put it up in the chat. You can download them from my English page. I have the website of my practice. It's called EFT Practice Actom.nl, of course. It's a Dutch website, but there's an English landing page. On that, you find both my basic protocols. So the free downloads, download them. You can use them. Another question, let's have a look. You had earlier addressed if you have an allergy and said to look at the last instance when you had the allergy. The last 2 times I had an allergic to food, same reaction, different foods. All I can hone in on is that I felt hurried when making a food choice. I only had a very small bite, but had a very bad physical reaction. Yeah, so whatever the food stuff is that you think is the culprit, once you've identified that food stuff gives you this reaction, you now have to go back in time and identify what was the earliest moment in my life where I was eating this food stuff while being stressed. if you are in a hurry, that might be part, it might be an aspect, a detail of what played in the earlier situation, in the one that started the stress pattern. But that needs investigation. You need to try some moments where you're eating this particular foodstuff and identify what is the stress that is going on. Now, obviously, you can start with this one. If you take a little bite, but you're in a hurry, step into the moment. Really step into the moment. Feel whatever the emotional reaction is. Neutralize any reaction. I'm not expecting that would solve your allergic reaction to the food stuff, because you need to do, the whole stress pattern needs work. How do you work with a negative core belief after working on a specific event that triggered it? Yeah, you always, if you know what your negative core belief is, you need to keep working on the specific moments where your negative core belief plays a role. So you need to keep selecting situations or worst moments of the day. So, for instance, if your negative core belief is I'm worthless, or I'm not good enough, or I'm bad, doesn't matter what the negative core belief is, keep selecting specific moments where the negative core belief plays a role. You cannot do EFT directly on the negative core belief. If you're triggered into your negative core belief and you really think, oh, I'm not good enough, and you're really upset, you can do EFT on the emotions that you feel while thinking the negative core belief, but only to bring the emotions down. Your next step is still identifying what are the specific situations where my negative core belief really plays, the leading part in my drama, because that's what it is, yeah? We all have our little dramas. So pick the moments, pick the persons that really can push your buttons. Do those specific moments. So if you want to work on any negative limiting belief, you have to identify in what specific moment do I think my negative core belief or my negative limiting belief? What are the specific moments where I'm triggered into thinking this belief? And obviously, if you go back in time, there must be probably several situations where you were taught to actually you learn yourself to think these negative conclusions. So you always need to work on the specific events, not on the thought, not on the conclusion. So thank you very much, Linda, to put my what's it called, URL of the practice in the chat. Excellent. I have a lot of good assistants here. Françoise, Linda, wonderful. Another question. If something is taking place just in the moment, for example, I just got triggering email, is this then the best moment to work on? Do you in procedure if you're working on something currently happening? No. If something happens right now, do it immediately. I mean, how associate do you want to be? If you're really, nicely triggered, do it immediately. Because if you do it in the moment that you're really triggered, that's the best moment to do it. It's not always feasible, but that would be the best moment. So just, ask everybody to amuse themselves and work either with tapping or the personal peace procedure or whatever triggered you. Because, in the end, if we wait and then afterwards have to go back and pretend we're in the moment, if we're really good at it, we will be able to activate everything in the moment, and then we will be able to activate the stress reaction, but it's second best. It's good. And it's also the reason why we can have, the only reason we can have chronic stress is that we are bloody good at activating our stress reaction. by simply thinking about stuff, because we all agree that whatever it was in the past, it's not happening right now. But merely either consciously thinking about it or being, triggered into it unconsciously, your system, part of your system, particularly your right brain, your right hemisphere, thinks it's happening right now. And that's the only reason why the stress response is activated. It's good if, all behavior is learned behavior. So it's wonderful that we don't have to find out with what utensil to eat the soup, and we pick up the spoon and start eating. I mean, we don't, there's lots of stuff are automated responses, which is wonderful. But for these stress reactions, it's rather unfortunate, really, because now you're triggered into a reaction. The biggest part, the largest part of this reaction has got to do with stuff in the past, not this moment. So yes, if something happens now and you are able to do EFT immediately, absolutely take advantage of that. If you're not able to be precise about the memories of the event and they are fading, can you still effective work on the event? Yes, but I would there's two ways of looking at this. If the event is very vague, you might be taking too big a step from here to, I want to work on this, but I don't know exactly what this is about. But if it's an important event, I would still start with a daily trigger, something that happens now that may, remind you of what happened back then. Halfway through, ask yourself, is this situation pertinent? Is this relevant for what I'm doing? If the event is vague, use what you do know. If there's enough details so that you can, associate and relive the event and activate the stress reaction, then you can work on it. If it's, vague and you can't even, come up with details that allow you to relive the moment, you can't work on that event effectively. Somebody is not amused because I did not answer her question. So now I have to see, I skipped something. Let me see. Ta-ta. What did I skip? Aha, here. What about an allergy to medical substances? Is it same like food allergy? I have an allergy to penicillin. Very good question. So here's the thing. Foodstuffs, things you can eat. I'm just, for the ease of the reasoning, assuming that we're eating edible stuff, so to speak. Penicillin and medicine is always poisonous, toxins and poisonous. So you don't have an allergy in the sense that your body is reacting to the penicillin with attacking your own body, but the penicillin can certainly be either a trigger or it's a toxin for your body. So then it's not an allergic. The doctors will probably say it's an allergic reaction, but actually penicillin is just toxic for you and you shouldn't take it. So if you look at bodily reactions to substances, there are obviously substances that are toxic or poisonous for the body. Well, yeah, they're triggers, but they're more, that's not an emotional thing. It's the reason your body is reacting is not because there's an emotional thing. If you're allergic to penicillin and you accidentally get it, or somebody isn't listening, or you make a mistake, and you take penicillin and think, oh, I shouldn't have taken it because I have a very bad reaction to penicillin, then that situation may cause you to have emotions about what happened. But toxins and poisons are not in itself not an emotional reason for a reaction of the body. It's simply poison or a and toxic? I hope I answered that question. And then I expect a nice smiley. And if I still haven't answered your question, then throw a tearful smiley at me again. No, then it's not a smiley, is it? Well, anyway, emoticon. Okay, now I see you grin. Excellent, excellent. All right. We need happy customers, don't we? What else? Are there any more questions? This is your chance. We can do a few more questions if you want. And if not, if we're done, then I will close off this webinar by thanking you for your attention and see you next time.